Welcome to the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, your guide to motorsports sponsorship. Here's your host, Josh Wiese.
Thanks for joining this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by AMSOIL. We have our first ever hill climb racer, which after going through this interview, I found out you're not supposed to say hill climb, you say Moto-climb. But our first Moto-climb racer, Shawn Widdicombe, on the show. Before I get into the interview with Shawn, I have a few things to tell you about. First off, AMSOIL. AMSOIL and I have teamed up. We've joined forces so that we can give you as much information as possible so that you can make the best motorsports sponsorship program possible. And not only is AMSOIL committed to that, but they're also committed to great oils. If you go and check out their website, you can see a ton of different products that are available. The most interesting thing, though, that I found with working with AMSOIL over the past several months is how they've marketed their brand with the Runs on Freedom campaign. They've actually given consumers access to information that I don't think they were aware of before, and that's the fact that you have the right to choose what kind of oil you run in your OEM machine, regardless of what the dealer might tell you. So the Runs on Freedom campaign is about teaching you that there is actually a law out there which specifically states that the OEM cannot dictate the oil that you use. If they do, then they have to pay for the oil. So it's really interesting stuff. I love how they've marketed it, and that's what this show is ultimately about too, is how do you market yourself? How do you help business market themselves as a sponsored rider, as a sponsored racer? So I just think it's really intriguing. But if you want to know more, head over to AMSOIL.com. You can find out more there. I would love to get your feedback about this show. Best way to do that, which also drives a ton more exposure for the show, is to head over to iTunes, leave a rating and review. If not, shoot me an email, josh@sponsoredriderclubpodcast.com. Also subscribe, whatever podcast player you use, hit the subscribe button. That's the best way to make sure you don't miss upcoming shows. We have an endurance snowmobile racer duo coming up, Andy Wenslaff and Taylor Bunke. And also we have Ben White. He's a sponsorship manager from Textron Off-Road. They're coming up soon. We just had Evan Schendel on from Polaris Razor as well. He's one of the marketing reps there. Totally killed it in this episode. That's released, so check it out. This episode here was brought to you by 6 other awesome companies. SolderWeld, they produce game-changing metal bonding technology. TopToPodium.com, they're experts in motorsports sponsorship. Bold Racing, they're a family race team and GSP, XTV, UTV axle specialist. Neverlift Racing, they create comfortable, race-inspired apparel. Crash Addict Industries, they provide human protection and extreme racing products. And then Racing Addix, they're providing a whole new spin on networking and motorsports sponsorship. I also want to shout out some of our other partners: MBRP Powersports, MBRP Exhaust, HMK USA, Studboy Traction, and GSP XTV. Without further ado, let's hop in. Today I'm joined by our featured guest, Shawn Widdicombe. Now, Shawn, first off, one of the most fun names we've ever had on the show, so congrats on that. And second off, go ahead and just take a couple minutes, introduce yourself, that way the audience gets to know you.
Well, yeah, I'm Shawn Widdicombe. I'm a professional hill climber. Been hill climbing pretty much my whole life, riding dirt bikes and motocross and things of that sort. And started professionally in 2009 or 2008 actually, and then kind of just progressed from there. And now do it all the time, race from one side of the country to the other, riding a dirt bike.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you know, when you originally reached out to me and we started chatting, I was just immediately was excited that you reached out, because I was like, we've never had a dirt bike hill climber on the show before. We've had a snowmobile hill climber on the show, but we've never had someone dirt bike. And I was like, that's just so cool. I've always been fascinated by the hill climbing. For whatever reason, I just love the extended swing arm look. It's so cool.
Yeah.
So I'm always kind of attracted to that. But I was like, in 100 and, well, let's see, I'm releasing episode 110 tomorrow. So today is September 30th when we're recording. I'm not sure exactly when this episode will release, but in 110 episodes, I'm like, how could I not have had a dirt bike hill climber on yet? So either way, it's awesome. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. It's an awesome time.
Well, I want to use Heat 1 to dive more into your background, and I've kind of explained this on the show before, but the way I structure these shows is, first off, in Heat 1, I want the listeners get to know the guests, and ultimately that's so that they can trust the guests more and like trust their advice, but maybe pull out some little tidbits of information in your experience in the process. So that's what Heat 1's about, is your background. And then later we get into Heat 2 where we kind of talk about what you do in the sponsorship world. And then the main event, we talk about mindset. And then the finish line, that's where we kind of close things out. If I ever get to the main event, lately we get so caught up in Heat 2 that I never actually get to the main event stuff. But we'll see how today goes.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. So tell us more about your story. I would love to know how you got into motorsports. And then kind of I want you to take us on a journey from that moment when you started to where you're at today.
All right. Well, so I was raised up here in Montana, and most people probably don't think that Montana for motorsports or anything like that, but hill climb is actually pretty much the oldest form of motorsports around here because of the Billings Motorcycle Club, and they've been around since 1914, and I've been pretty lucky, got to be a part of that club just up until a couple of years ago. But my grandpa was the president of that club. My grandpa hill climbed back in the 1960s, and he got into it from his dad, who basically, if there were motorcycles around, my great grandpa he was into it. So that's how our tradition kind of started. And then next thing you know, my grandpa, him and his brother, they're racing around everywhere. I mean, they raced everyone from Dick Man to Evel Knievel. I mean, it was just back in those days they raced the scrambles. And then they started hill climb. They were actually they did some innovation on the hill climb side of things. They made the first bolt tire that's ever been really known. And now that's a pretty common thing in our sport, where we drive bolt studs through a paddle tire for extra traction. So I mean, my roots are dug deep into hill climb and stuff like that. And my dad then started hill climbing back in the 80s, all the way up until about 1997 when he sold all of his bikes, so me and my brother could just start racing motocross more, because we're kind of getting to the point where he wanted to travel around and have us race. Well, so we did that up until probably 2007 or 2008. But at 16, 17 years old, you kind of have to make a choice where I pretty much knew I wasn't good enough to ever go race pro motocross, but my brother might have been.
Okay.
But we kind of came to a group decision that we were going to go hill climb.
Okay.
And the previous couple of years before that, I had gotten injured a lot. I mean, from the time I was 13 till I was 20, I had 7 different surgeries, and so the motocross it was getting too rough on me.
That's why I didn't do it either. It was getting too rough. I was winning a couple championships, but I guess no, I'm just kidding. I've never raced. Sorry. I just wanted to try to feel cool for a minute, but continue.
Yeah, no, yeah. And, so that just kind of, it made us start hill climbing. And, my dad, is a welder by trade.
Okay.
We're, our real job is, Boilermakers, union Boilermakers. So, me and my dad and my brother, my grandpa, my great grandpa, we've all been Boilermakers. So, I mean, we just kind of follow a tradition and we keep with it. And so he's a welder. Well, he built all of his bikes back in the 80s. And, the hill climbers, we take street bike engines and we put them in a dirt bike frame
Mm-hmm.
and extend the swing arm out. We use bolts, chains as tires. I mean, back in the 80s, they put steel paddles on them. And,
Huh.
so,
Steel paddles, really?
Yeah. And they kind of outlawed those because people were starting to get really hurt. I mean, you can imagine a 1100 or 11,000 RPM tire coming at somebody. It could tear somebody up, but so, and so, in 2008, we started hill climbing, and that's basically how we got to start doing that. And in 2011, my brother, he won the 450 national championship for hill climbing. And so, I mean, he's always been, I guess you can say, in the 450 class, because we have 3 classes. We have the 450 class, the 451 to 700 cc class, and then the 701 to open cc class. And so on that little bike, he's always been really talented. I mean, he's a great motocross rider. And in 2011, he won that national championship. And so that kind of, made it worth it for us to keep doing this. Mm-hmm. And then, me and my brother, we started getting families together and stuff like that, having kids, and still traveling around doing everything. And it wasn't just until probably 2 years ago where we always rode Kawasaki's. And the place where we got Kawasaki's from, the guy sold everything. And we kind of had to take a step back. We're like, whoa, we don't have any bikes, where we can get bikes anymore. So we made this big switch where, I mean, at one time we had 16 Kawasaki's.
Holy cow, 16?
At one time. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we
holy cow.
Since there's all these different classes, we build bikes, we experiment with things, different engines and stuff like that, because, I mean, for what works with some people, might not work with other people, like everything. So, yeah, so we ended up selling everything, and we went and bought KTMs. Like, within a month of selling all these Kawasaki's, we had, 10 KTMs. Oh, wow. And so then we built all new 700 bikes and open bikes, and today we're riding the KTMs and stuff like that, and that's basically what gets us to this point, and this year we've been all the way across the country. We had a race in New York, and then actually on Wednesday I leave for a race in California.
Oh, okay.
And that's the final round of the year.
Very cool. That's still kind of blowing my mind. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but 16 bikes. Like, I'm expecting, let's say if you're racing all 3 classes, maybe double that, maybe 6. Like, so you got a practice bike and a race bike, but 16.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I guess then there's 2 of you. And...
Yeah, it's between me and my brother, you know. So,
wow.
But yeah, and right now we have, I think we actually have more than that. I mean, I have to go count, but
are you serious?
There's quite a bit. Yeah. No, it's just we build some things and we're like, well, that works good at this place, but it might not work so good at this other place, so we'll build this bike instead. I mean, that's just, and my dad is really into building bikes. Mm-hmm. I mean, he can deny it all he wants, but his life objective is to build as many bikes as he can.
So look, this is when you have a lot of bikes, is when you would have to actually go out and count them to know how many you have. That's no. Like, there's a threshold that you cross where you're like, I don't know anymore. It's somewhere between like 12 and 20. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, then, but me and my brother, we have all these bikes. Well, then my oldest son, he has 2 bikes of his own. Then my brother's kid has another 2 bikes, so mm-hmm. I mean, they just keep stacking on. I mean, we're gonna have to build another garage to keep all the bikes in.
Yeah. But it's actually very difficult for me to count how many bikes I have as well, but it's for a completely different reason because it's 0. And really, how do you count 0, right? So it's a theoretical challenge. That's interesting, man. Well, you know what? So you kind of talked about where, what your journey was and how you got to where you're at today. But what are you most involved with now? Like, what are you most fired up about right now?
Well, so hill climbing kind of there's like a big division in it. And I don't know why. It's just kind of always been like this, where we have this East Coast and we have a West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then on the West Coast, it's divided there too.
Okay.
So there's basically, up until this year, there was 3 hill climb series across the United States.
Mm-hmm.
There was the AMA on the East Coast, which that ran up until Minnesota. And then everything from the West Coast till Minnesota was the North American Hill Climb Association, or the Rockwell Hill Climb Association.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of my really good friends, he's a promoter. He's really has nothing to do. I mean, I don't even really know how he got involved in hill climbing. I'd have to ask him. He's my age. He's 26, and he was like, "Man, that's weird that there's this big division and everything." He's like, "I think I want to start a hill climb series that runs from coast to coast."
Oh, okay.
And and of course, with anything, there's going to be the naysayers and people that are mad about this and mad about that. But it kind of got the top riders kind of excited, because it was like, well, we don't get to race against the best of the best, quote unquote, from the East Coast or, whatever. And so with this, everyone kind of just joined in, and this year we've ran a coast to coast series for a true national championship, because that's always been a fight in this. That's probably why hill climbing hasn't grown as much as it should have, because there's always been this big giant division. And so we're trying to put the stop to it. And so now we have the best of the best riding against each other from East Coast. And so, that's what I've been working on a lot, is promoting that and promoting just the sport in general. We don't call it hill climbing anymore. Actually, we call it Moto-climb.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that around.
Yeah, so Moto-climb, that's what my buddy Matt came up with, because he said, he's like, if you go on YouTube and type hill climb, the first 30 videos that pop up are all like car racing, like Pikes Peak. Because when most people hear hill climbing, they think like Pikes Peak hill climb, which is car racing.
Yeah.
So he's like, let's put the stop to that. Let's come up with our own sport, our own name, and let's do this. So like getting that name fired up off the ground and getting it promoted to where people now associate the word Moto-climb with the traditional hill climbing, motorcycle hill climbing. That's pretty much what I've been trying to do for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's worked so far. I mean, we go everywhere and people are stoked that this new series is around and stuff like that.
Well, you know what? I think that whole idea is pretty cool. I mean, especially if you're looking at trying to create even a more elite program, because you're trying to entice the top racers from the different divisions to race against one another in a national league. So that's pretty cool. But I tell you what, I really want to talk a little bit more about the naming change. That's a pretty good idea. I mean, there are a number of, I guess, different ways to market a new program or a new sport, and one of those is through social media, like YouTube or any of the other social media sites, and searchability is very important. So if you search hill climb, if someone's like, I want to know more about hill climb, and they can't find the content, at least not easily, that's a big gap. I mean, I'll tell you, honestly, I've never really talked about this in a show before, but one of the challenges I found after creating this show, because when I was picking the title for the show, I was back and forth on what I should call it, and I ended with sponsored rider because I wanted to be able to attract backcountry snowmobilers and ATV racers and dirt bikes, and I figured they would relate to that. But I'd also wanted to connect with drivers. So someone who rides in a UTV would call himself a driver most likely. And I had a hard time, but I went with sponsored rider because I felt like that was the market that I didn't have connections with already. Either way, I went through all of this thought about that stuff, but I never thought about is what happens when you search sponsorship on like a Google or even on regular social media. And I've run into this as a challenge now, and I don't know how to fix it yet, but sponsorship is also very big for, especially in America, for corporate sponsorship, meaning sponsoring employees that are from another country. So you can sponsor them, to work in the country for a period of time, and then ultimately they can get their visa or become a citizen. You can sponsor them for that program. Well, that's what you would find a lot of times if you do these searches. That, or I also found equestrian uses sponsored rider as a term. So if I tag on social media, if I do hashtag sponsored rider, it comes up with a lot of horse riders. And then if you just search sponsorship, it's a lot of people trying to figure out how to get sponsored by a company. Actually, it's my sponsored rider club group page on Facebook. I decline I get probably 3 to 4 requests a day to join for people who are trying to figure out how to get sponsored as part of an American company versus actually a sponsored program. So it's crazy. But thinking about this, that's cool because you guys were like, no, we're going to change the name and we're going to work on that branding. Yeah, it's going to take a couple years, but I thought, I don't know, maybe I just rambled on for a long time about something that's not as big of a deal, but I think it's huge.
No, that's exactly the problem that we were having. We found that nobody was seeing our content because it was associated with another sport or another discipline of motorsports. So we, when Matt decided that there's the people that really hated that, but and a lot of the older traditional people that that have another deep roots in the sport. I mean, there's other families that have been doing this since the 30s and 40s,
Right.
And so, they were really against it because, I think they felt like it was dragging down their family's legacy, but all we were trying to do was expand it so more people could see the legacy.
Right.
And that's what me and another rider, Austin Tyler, he's the most talented guy on a dirt bike that no one knows about. I mean,
what was his name again? Or I should say, how do you spell it?
Austin Tyler. It's Teyler. And he is,
okay.
If you go watch his videos on YouTube or his Instagram page, he is phenomenal. It's mind-blowing how he can throw around a 400-pound motorcycle like it's a CR125 on a motocross track. And, we watch him. Well, that was the whole problem is no one knew who he was or no one knew what was going on. Well, a couple of us kind of started catching on to the social media side of things. And we're really looking at it. And, bam, next thing you know, Austin Tyler is getting invited to France for the Hill Climb World Championship, which an American hasn't been to in, I think, 8 years now. And he won it last year, you know? Wow. So, he's one of my best friends. He lives right up the road from me. So, I get to see him all the time.
That's awesome.
But, he's like how we promoted the sport differently. It's been seen in the last year by, millions or more people just because of the way we branded it differently.
I think that's really cool. And I just looked up Austin too. That was one reason why I wanted to know how to spell his name. One, so I could look him up, and then two, so other people listening could look him up.
Yeah.
And maybe he'll get like 5 more followers now. That no, just kidding. No, it's cool, and I always like seeing people's style. Like, you can tell a lot really quickly by looking at somebody's Instagram profile. That's one thing I really like about Instagram. You can kind of scroll through within 5 to 10 seconds. You get a read of their style. It looks like Austin's got a good style too. So.
Oh yeah.
Well, cool.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And
look, I'm sorry, but I gotta admit something. I like to look cool. I like to wear high quality clothing. I like it to be comfortable, and I also like it to portray the values that I also hold true to myself. That's why I like Neverlift Racing. So they were founded in 2013, and they are all about high quality, comfort, and looking cool. So, like I said before, exactly what I'm looking for out of clothing. Admittedly, my favorite shirt of all time is the Neverlift Racing silver badge t-shirt. Like, I wear this thing probably too often because way too many pictures of me on social media are wearing this shirt. Either way, they have a ton more out there. So go get your shirt, your hoodie, your hat, and actually your socks. Probably one of the most comfortable pair of socks I've ever owned too. And they got pretty cool things where it says never on one side, lift on the other. Really cool stuff. Get your apparel. Wear something that supports your values. Live fast, drive hard, Neverlift Racing. I hear it constantly from racers that a good suspension setup is absolutely critical for performance, and that's why I'm going to talk to you next about Bold Racing and suspension. Now, it's really critical to understand your suspension, and there's so many intricacies with the valving and the shims and all this crazy equipment that you need to actually, rebuild and properly set up your suspension, that it's really important, if you're ready for that next level of performance, to partner with an awesome suspension company. Now, Bold Racing is that company. They're not only specialists with their suspension setups, but they also partner with companies that produce amazing custom components. And on top of that, they're a family race team. They actually race themselves, so they really understand the type of beating that your vehicle and your shocks can take. So what I want you to do is give them a call and just chat with them. Talk to them about suspension. Their number is 702-506-5354. If you're not ready for a phone call, go ahead and shoot them an email, bold.racing@yahoo.com.
What's up, everyone? This is Mike Pasquarella, founder of Desert Vets Racing. When the team goes racing, we always have our SolderWeld products with us. Keeping the cars in the fight is our number one concern. With SolderWeld, we can do that. SolderWeld is a leading company in the U.S. for aluminum repair. They specialize in radiator repair on the fly. If you're stuck in the middle of the trail or a race with a hole in your radiator, oil pan, or canister, or even an aluminum line, you can fix it right then and there in a matter of minutes with their AMSOIL aluminum repair rods and flux. It's the only complete and lasting fix in the off-road community. SolderWeld's new UTV off-road kits fit in every ride and are easy to access on the fly.
SolderWeld continues to make a huge positive impact on this industry. So I really encourage you, get in there now. Go to solderweld.us, check out their products, because this stuff is changing the game. 2 questions I get continuously about this show and about sponsorship is, do I need my own website and do I need a resume? The answer is, in my opinion, yes to both, and that's why we partner with TopThePodium.com. Now, if you want to see an example of what a professional website and what a professional resume looks like, you got to check out TopThePodium.com. They did my website. The Sponsored Rider Club podcast website is sponsoredriderclubpodcast.com. That was created by Jeff Vanistall of TopThePodium.com. I think it's awesome. I get a lot of good feedback about it. And there's a number of other websites out there that Jeff has produced that are just phenomenal. So I think it's important in this world of social media where you have control of your content That's what a website does. It gives you full control. We don't know what Facebook's going to do sometimes. We don't know what Instagram's going to do. We don't know what Twitter's going to do. So if we don't have that central location to direct people and house our content, there is some risk that we incur. So I strongly recommend getting a website, talking to topthepodium.com. And then the resume, again, is massive. And if you want to stand out, get it done professionally. And honestly, it is one of the best ways to step up your game and present yourself in the best way possible. Are you ready for an entirely new approach to motorsports sponsorship and networking? I'm assuming the answer is yes, because why else would you be listening to this podcast? We are excited to be teaming up with Racing Addix. They are legitimately questioning and challenging the status quo on sponsorship. Once you become part of their network, they will first off sponsor you directly, but then also help link you with other companies who are dedicated to making motorsports better and providing you with additional sponsorship opportunities. This is crazy stuff. If you're excited about this, then join the club. Your next step is to head over to the social media and find Racing Addix, give them a follow, and stay tuned for what's next. Safety is our overriding priority. I hear it all the time, but I have to ask myself, is it though? Is that the first thing we think of? Is that the first thing you think of? Over the past couple of years, we've seen the performance of production UTVs increase, somewhere around 350%. That means these machines give us a lot more opportunity to have fun and win races, but it also, unfortunately, gives us new opportunities to crash. And that's why we have partnered with Crash Addict Industries. The owner, Travis Pointer, became very accustomed to crashing early in his career. He saw it as inevitable, and he set out to make the process safer. With a passion for racing, welding, and engineering, Crash Addict Industries now produces full cage and other protection systems intentionally designed to protect you during an accident on the track. They also offer a line of human protection products through their vendors. Do this for me at this point. If you're racing with a stock cage right now, please go check out crashaddict.com and at least just see what they have to offer. Even if you choose to go with a different company, please make safety your overriding priority.
Social media, how you promote yourself it's not how you really view yourself, but how other people view you is how you get sponsors and things of that sort. I mean, we kind of have this rule, me and Matt and Austin do, where like our Facebook profiles, we kind of use those. Those are our personal ones. Yeah. Family, friends, things of that sort. And Instagram is business. YouTube is business. Because if you can't give your brands a place to see the way you brand yourself, then you're missing the gap of what they want. Yeah. You're missing exactly what they want, And not that I love my family. I love everything else, but I use the Instagram as a business profile. So the sponsors can see exactly what I'm doing, and not that I'm living some fake life, but you want them to see what your day-to-day things are and how you carry yourself, not that you're not out doing all these crazy things that are going to get you in trouble with the law, because they don't want to be associated with that, Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of people out there that do that kind of thing, and that really can tear down a relationship really fast with sponsors. Yeah,
definitely. I just put a little note in here about that. We've talked about it in the show before, and some people are very passionate about mixing the two. Some people are very passionate about making sure there's a clear division between, what they do for their sport and who they are as a person. I know some people who have been on the show before that they have a fake personal page because they want it to be just for their family or just for their close friends, and it's much more controlled. I think I don't really know what the right answer is anymore because I've heard so many different examples, but what I'll tell you is be consistent. So whatever you pick, whatever strategy you pick, be consistent with that. And I think that's probably what works well for people. We talk about in the show, be true to who you are. And if you truly believe in intertwining the two, then great, do that. I do strongly recommend, though, if you do intertwine the two, you just have to think pretty closely about what you post. Because just like you said, there's some goofy things you can do, whether they're legal or illegal, that can make a sponsor very uncomfortable and ultimately end that relationship. So you got to be really cautious about that. But I think that the answer is just be consistent with whatever direction you choose.
Yeah. Well, and then, the other side of that is, your family as well, because you do want to take care of your sponsors, but you also want to take care of your family,
Yeah.
Not that I'm some famous, person, but when my wife starts getting messages on Instagram or all these follow requests from just random people, she's not into it like that. So, that's why I kind of mark the division, where it says her name on there, but she's not really involved with that sort of thing, as far as being on there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've never really thought about that before. There's some people, their significant other is really involved at the business. And when I say business, it usually means racing, but it could be, backcountry snowmobiles. It could be just pure content creation. But, I know there's others where their significant other is not involved with the business and doesn't really want to be. And I never thought about that. If people reaching out and saying like, hey, probably trying to reach you, right? Like, hey, I saw that you're connected. Like, how can I get a hold of Shawn? Man, I never thought about that. That's weird. That's kind of like superhero-esque. Like, in Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. I think you're Spider-Man in this scenario, and your wife is MJ.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it makes it pretty awkward when when people start messaging and stuff like that. It's just because she's like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna message them back, but here you go.
Huh. Gosh, I'm wondering if I've ever done anything like that before, because I definitely am trying to lock down guests, and I'll message people that I know that are associated with, and it seems like it goes well, but gosh, I don't think I've ever done that, but that's interesting. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's something to consider, especially, there are some people out there that their following can drastically grow pretty quickly, and stuff like that can get a little out of control, and you don't really want to. It's like you don't want to put the brakes on and stop the action from happening, but you might need to create some clear segregation just to, protect people that you're close with from getting kind of barraged with messages.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, seeing that's kind of how my social media following started was, my wedding video. Me and my wife did a burnout in downtown Billings.
I just watched that.
Our anniversary was just the other day. I always say I can't go a year without posting my wedding video. But so we do that, and I post it. At that time, I think I had like 600 followers.
Okay.
Not that I wasn't trying for all these. I wanted to expand hill climbing and all that sort of thing, but it just wasn't working the way I thought it, or the way I wanted it to.
Yeah.
Well, so I post this video, and I wake up the next morning, and I have like 2,000 followers.
Oh wow!
And I'm like, whoa, what the heck? Well, so I kind of traced them all back down and found all these places that were reposting my video, you know. And I mean,
Yeah.
I was just like, whoa, that's crazy. But then I was like, whoa, that's how you do it right there. You have to create, and I mean, I'll kind of hit it once. It's like, whoa, you got to create content that people are going to like. You just can't, you know, be posting, you know, one day your dirt bike, the next day, you know, anything random, you know, your pillow or something like that, you know. It's just kind of one of those things, you know. I was like, okay, well, so this is how you do it.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I discovered it all. And then through that video, actually, that's how I got in touch with like a lot of different quote unquote famous riders. I mean, Twitch, that's how me and him began to know each other, Jeremy Stenberg. And through him, there was just, you know, multiple others, and it just all kind of blossomed off that one video and had nothing to do with hill climbing. And I mean, that's just, sometimes it works out that way. But then after that, then I kind of saw what was going on, started posting more hill climb stuff, and went away from everything else. Well, then I was like, whoa, this is starting to really blow up. And my goal was, you know, to be the most followed hill climber in the world, which now I am. Hill climbing isn't that big of a sport in the media sense side. So having 14,000 followers isn't really, you know, this grand all amount, but in the hill climb world, it's the most by far, you know? So that's kind of was my goal. And then once that happened, I was like, okay, let's keep this going. And, you know, in that sense, my wife is involved because she's out filming me, has a baby on her back, and we're out in the hills with, you know, 225 horsepower nitromethane injected bike. And, you know, riding up a hill, and that's, she's out there filming me with a baby on her back, you know? So, you know, it just kind of crazy how that stuff, came together.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Well, one thing I want to know right now is who some of your current partners and sponsors are, and then after that, we'll kind of dive into Heat 2.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So my biggest sponsor is definitely my name itself, Widdicombe Pro Hill Climbing, which is my dad and my grandpa. Without them, you know, that's a partnership that you never want to wreck is your family. That's for dang sure, because, you know, that's the best support system you can have, you know, whether it be financially or the mental side of things. You know, if you don't feel like you're getting enough support from them as a racer or enthusiast, you know, it's hard to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, you know what? I've definitely seen elements of that. I wrote down family tradition here on my notes, which automatically made me think of Hank Williams Jr., but either way, though, like the Boilermaker tradition, the hill climb, the dirt bike tradition, it's all there.
The Hank Williams tradition, that's the Hank, why do you drink? That's certainly a tradition that for some reason everyone else in my family has too.
yeah, that's funny. Well, no, keep going. Sorry. So yeah, Widdicombe is kind of like the biggest deal from a mental and support and building the bike sponsorship side. Yep. Yeah.
Then Team Peterson, who's the biggest, they're like the granddaddy of them all hill climbing. It's KTM factory support team.
Okay.
It's the elite of the elite bikes, everything. And I'm lucky enough that they are one of my sponsors. And like my KTM 990, that's on 50% nitromethane. That is from them. That motor is from them. And that's a factory KTM motor that came out of a factory KTM road racing bike. And so in that sense, I got really lucky. They saw something in me and decided to help us out that way.
That's pretty cool. You know, so your bike, you said 990 running 50%. nitro. That's okay. I actually have a 991. It's running 51%. It's not a big deal. It's just a little bit better than yours. No, don't you hate
like
one-uppers?
Yeah.
Don't you hate one-uppers?
Oh yeah.
I like to do that with
yeah.
people. I one-up on something I have I don't even understand, and I definitely am not involved with. So I won 6 trophies the other day. Oh wow, that's great. I won 7, but that's fine. If you only won 6, like that's good for you. As a lesser human being than I am. But sorry.
Oh yeah. I hear that all the time from, of course, people that they're like, man, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, what's a 990 on nitromethane? I'm like, okay. It's a street bike and a dirt bike frame.
Yeah. And
then you go to the drag strip and those nitromethane dragsters. That's what I have in this bike.
Gosh, that's that's just a lot, man. It's a lot.
Oh yeah, no, and fuel costs for those are just ridiculous.
Oh,
it's $52 a gallon for nitromethane.
52?
Yes,
Holy
$52 a gallon.
That is nuts.
On my bike that runs 100% nitro, I'm not kidding you. Every time I start this bike, it costs $52.
Holy cow.
Yeah, no, it's crazy how much fuel costs. Yeah, if there's anyone that wants to sponsor nitromethane fuel, that'd be cool. They can help me out for sure on that one.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's hard to get fuel in the U.S. right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it all gets shipped in from China. There's no manufacturer, so VP Fuels is our supplier, and sometimes they run out because the drag teams need them. So it's like, all right, well, we'll go search for nitro somewhere else. I've heard of people paying like $200 a gallon for nitro because it's just an empty market in the U.S.
I definitely don't want to convert my F-150 to nitro. That would that'd be a challenge.
Yeah, no, you don't, trust me. But and the one thing I was just gonna kind of emphasize on is what you really want to do is talk to local businesses before anything.
Yeah.
As an up and coming rider or anything like that. If you can get the support of your local side of things, then building a relationship there is kind of the key of success when you're first starting out.
Mm-hmm.
Because of course everyone wants to be sponsored by an energy drink or a factory, factory Honda, factory KTM, but that just doesn't happen overnight. You got to build a relationship with some local people first. And for me, that's my suspension guy, Jason Albrecht from Rooster's Nest MX Pro Shop up here in Montana. He's actually specializes in hill climbing suspension, because your suspension reacts so much different on a hill climb bike than a regular motocross bike. He's specialized in that and really can make the bike perform beyond, what your stock suspension can on a hill climb bike.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of have gone around Billings and kind of just talk to local businesses. They don't even have to be motorsports involved. Anything really does help. When you're traveling from one side of the country to the other in a motorhome and a 30-foot enclosed trailer, that's a lot of gas. Any money, can help do that. That's kind of the message I wanted to tell everybody. But then we've been running rocket exhaust since we came on KTMs, and the best thing about that is it came at the most random type of sponsorship you could ever think of. My dad was cruising Craigslist for in Southern California. I remember, I think he was looking for wreck street bikes, wreck KTM street bikes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so he comes across this deal on there that said exhaust for sale, KTM 450. So him just being curious clicks on it, and it's a brand new rocket exhaust and they wanted like half the price for it. So he's like, huh, calls the guy up, and the guy answers, he's like, yeah, so-and-so from Rocket Exhaust. And we're like, whoa, okay, so the Rocket Exhaust. And so they started talking. Next thing you know, the fabricator for Rocket Exhaust builds a couple of sets of exhaust for us. Then they just sent us exhaust for all of our bikes. And
which is a lot. If we remember earlier, that's a lot of bikes, a lot of exhaust.
Yeah. Oh no, it is. Yeah.
Wow.
And they were really cool about it, and that's just kind of a random way how to find a sponsor. But
yeah, I've never heard that one before.
It worked out. Yeah, it just kind of worked out, And so then me and my wife and my son were driving through Southern California, and I texted the owner, and we went down to the Rocket Exhaust shop and walked through their shop, see what they had fabricated. They were actually building a pipe for my dad right there. And, we just kind of cruised in at the right time. And, there's just kind of a coincidence that it all happened, but it worked out for us.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
Then, we have a couple other sponsors, Lace Belt Company. They're a belt company, like for your pants. And,
okay. I was thinking like a snowmobile or a CVT belt or something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. Yeah. It's just kind of a weird deal. Another hill climber decided that he skateboarded a lot and decided that he was going to make these belts, and he's actually doing pretty good with it. I mean, he's got quite a few people locked up on sponsorships now. Josh Hill, Vicky Golden, and he's like, man, my pants keep falling down when I'm skateboarding. I'm gonna make a shoelace and brand it Lace Belt, and now it worked out for him.
Wow.
Not just I kind of talked to him about doing some things, and the hard thing for like a new startup company like that is maybe not money for doing things, but product, and whether that's promotional product or just getting their name out there, that helps any of these smaller companies, and those companies are going to remember that when you in the long look of things.
Yeah.
They're going to remember, oh man, yeah, he did that for me. I'm going to help him out good this year, So that's kind of, why I took on, that's a random sponsor to have, but, we just did that, and, hopefully that can flourish into something better in the future.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing is starting off, you have to start off little with some people as far as these sponsorships, and then let it grow, because, don't get mad because they didn't do this or this. There's always a reason, and most of the time it's because, these companies are starting up and they might not have the budget for a bigger project than what you have in mind.
Yeah. I just want to add a couple of notes on what you're talking about with local sponsors or smaller businesses. One benefit with starting that way is, especially if you're a grassroots racer that is only racing in a local series or a smaller series, that's a big benefit for a local sponsor, because they're not worried about reaching people all over the U.S. and you're not capable of it yet outside of social media. So it's a good way to start. I also think that starting with a small company allows you some flexibility in proposing sponsorships and proposing packages. I guess it gives you the experience in that venue, because a lot of times the smaller companies, especially if they're starting up, they've never done this before either. So you can work together and figure out how you want to do it, how you want to structure it. yeah, if you're both successful, then you see this growth. They're growing, you're helping each other out, and you look back, maybe it's, let's say, 10 years on a really great scenario. You look back 10 years, you're like, wow, I can't believe how much we've done together. And so I think that is a really, really good spot to start. And another piece, too, is if you're just trying to figure out the whole sponsorship deal, because it is complicated. I mean, there's a reason why we've already released 110 episodes at this point. I don't even, like I said, this episode, I don't know what it'll be, 115 or 114, but we've already released it, and we just keep on coming up with new examples. It is complicated, but you start off simpler, meaning like no contracts either. A lot of times the smaller companies, they don't have a legal department, and they don't want to go through the hassle of coming up with a full-fledged contract, and you wouldn't even know what to put in a contract yet, most likely.
Yeah.
So I think that is another advantage to kind of break down the barriers of, what it would take to do a sponsorship deal with somebody, is to remove some of those potential roadblocks and get your experience with the smaller company and actually, like you said before, grow that then into something that maybe you never have to move on from that sponsor.
Yeah. And, that's actually, I was going to kind of transition to the next sponsor that way, because another one is that we have is Rhino Rush Energy Drink.
Mm-hmm.
And they started out, basically, they were only in Idaho and Montana. And they just kind of had a really small team and really weren't doing much, but they were doing product and stuff like that. But it started off really small, and now with their growth comes my growth, in the sense that they didn't really want to do any big packages or anything like that, because they were so limited on where their product was seen. Well, now their product is seen nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
You go into almost any gas station, you're going to see a Rhino Rush energy drink. And whether it be the little shot deals like the 5 hours, or the 16-ounce cans. And with like I said, with their growth came our growth. Now, we can pretty much negotiate whatever we want with those guys, with Josh and Jeremy at Rhino Rush, and they are really stoked on what I have going on, and what I can bring to the table, because they had a NASCAR, they're stuffing on a nationwide truck, I think it is.
Oh, okay.
One of the NASCAR trucks.
Yeah.
In the truck series. Well, so that's awesome, to be associated with a sponsor that has that sort of that reach, and I mean, NASCAR is huge.
Right.
It's, and so, when they go and do that they come back and look at Rhino Rush, people are like, oh, who's Rhino Rush? Come back, look at their page, and they see me, and it's all, with their growth comes my growth, and it worked out perfect.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay, so what I want to talk about next, now that we've got a good understanding of your sponsors and some of the ways that you've made those connections, actually, I want to dive deeper into, I don't know, maybe how you built relationships, and maybe it is the initial connection with some of these. I'm actually particularly interested in the Rhino Rush energy drink, to dive into that more, because that is pretty interesting how it started on a smaller scale and it's built. Do you remember how you initially made that relationship?
Well, so they actually came to hill climb up here in Montana, and they were just kind of doing a little bit of promotional stuff, and I just kind of went up and started talking to them, and it was like, and I think this was back in 2011. Okay. Or maybe it was 2012, but just went and started kind of talking to them, and made my move on the side of things, and let them kind of think about what they want to do, because they probably had no idea of what they want to do with sponsorship or anything like that. And so we just kind of moved on from there and just steadily built, we've grown into a better partnership that way. With this year, basically anytime I call them up and ask them, really, they are like, yeah, go ahead. It makes it a lot easier to work with somebody, once you get to really know them, and it didn't happen overnight. And it just kind of worked out that way.
So you said that you went in and kind of talked with them. How did you even get to that point? Was that a meet? Like, was that a scheduled meeting, or was it ad hoc?
Just out at the hill climb.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I just went up and started talking to him, and he was like, "Yeah, add me on Instagram, Facebook," and it just kind of worked out that way.
Huh. So yeah, and that one's at the time you said it was around 2011. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so at that time around 2011, they're just kind of getting their feet off the ground. Is this something where you pitched to them that, hey, I'm growing, you're growing, let's make this thing work together, or was it not even that prescriptive?
Yeah, it kind of was like that.
Okay.
It was like that. I was like, hey, pretty much if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours the best I can, Yeah. Even with just like, hey man, a couple of free energy drinks, whatever. It just, it just kind of, it started off really small, and then it's, you're helping each other, with growth. And that's the main thing.
Yeah. I encourage people to take this approach too, if they know of a company, or if they're at a show, right, and you see a company that is not massive yet, or it's still growing, and you're looking at your career and saying, well, what am I really realistically ready to take on, or where can I realistically support somebody? I think that's definitely a good approach. This is something that if people have been listening to my show, they've noticed Bold Racing has been a part of it for a long time, since the very early stages. I think they were the second sponsor that came on the show, and they're still with me. And that was the same conversation that Jimmy Moore, he's the owner. That's the same conversation we had. He's like, hey, I like what you're doing, and I said the same to him, and he's like, look, we're both kind of getting started, getting our feet wet. We're gonna grow together, and it's a cool feeling. It's a little bit different bond, I think, that you form, and when you grow together like that.
Yeah, no, and it makes you feel a little bit more accomplished when you see the growth of both sides.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that I actually have kind of taken the same approach right now with a gear company. I can't say which one,
okay,
but that's kind of the same approach I'm taking with them, is instead of, because there's so many avenues that you can take, whether it be a sponsor, MX sponsor, or hook it, or through their website or something like that. If you can find a way to go directly to the source
mm-hmm.
of a brand manager, that's what you want to do. And, usually what I've noticed is that if they see that you're taking that approach, they're like, okay, there's some form of commitment
mm-hmm.
on your side. If you're trying to reach out to somebody that you don't even know and asking them for something, that takes something to do that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Actually, I've just thought about this. I've been doing career fairs for a while through my day job, and a career fair at a college is kind of chaotic. There's a lot of people they have a very obvious intent, right? They're looking for an internship, a co-op, or a full-time position. And they all are, right? They all are. And they all have
Yep.
a resume, and they all have their own little pitch in their mind. But I'll tell you what, I was at my booth I think this was like 2 weeks ago, maybe it was last week. At the booth I was at, it had a line forming, which was awesome to see. And I was excited that people were excited to be there. And what I noticed is the people that were in line, they would wait 15 to 30 minutes to get to our booth. And immediately I was like, they're invested. Like, they're invested more than there was other people that would just stop. Oh, hey, tell me a little bit more about your company. I was like, okay, I can tell you're still a nice person and you're committed to finding a job, but I don't know if you're at all as committed to this company as the people who've been standing in line. And then what makes it worse? So sometimes you can't control the length of the line, right? I can't judge somebody if they walk up and there was no line, right? But when I ask them, okay, what brings you to this booth? Or when I ask, what do you know about the company? Which are two questions that I ask kind of to get things going. And they say, oh, I'm looking for a job. Okay, that's great. Everybody is, but that's great that you're being honest. And two, what do you know about this company? Well, not really anything. Like, okay, well, someone else who just talked to me, like this literally happened. One of the students that came up to me said they waited in line for, I think it was maybe 15 minutes, and they said, look, first off, I really love this company. I've actually lived somewhat in the area for my whole life. I wrote a paper on the company in high school because I was so interested in it, and I use the products that the company builds. So like where I work, it's Eaton is the name of the company, and they make differentials and superchargers and valve train components and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
But he's like, yeah, I run the Eaton lockers in my Jeep, and I had the show Jeep with me, and he was like, you want to go look at it? I was like, yes, let's go look at it. Like now he's got passion. He's obviously researched the company. That's going to stand out. And there's people that are like that, right? I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why...
want to start on Monday.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one of the reasons why AMSOIL connected with me, because they knew that I used their product and I was really passionate about it. And I think that's part of it. And if there's a little bit of that research done ahead of time, it pays... I think it pays dividends because there's so many people that come out of the woodwork to apply for sponsorships that have not done that at all. Zero.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, there definitely is. And there's people that they want something, or they just want something for free to say they got it for free.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I mean, that's basically what I've noticed a lot is that, I mean, that's how there's just a lot of people in the motorcycle industry that are like that. I mean, they could care less about building a relationship with them like that. They just want something for free because they think they deserve that.
Mm-hmm.
And, it takes a lot I think that's why people or companies are so hesitant to sponsor people, because there's no, loyalty.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just hard for a company to do that. And, I've talked to lots of different companies about that, and, you got to show some form of loyalty in a little way first before, they start, giving you things,
Right.
It's a sponsorship is a stepping stone,
No, that's a very good point. What I want to dive into a little bit more, it's going back to what you talked about earlier, is your viral video for your wedding when you did the burnout on the bike. And now that I know it's you, like I saw the video, I didn't realize it was you at the time. But when you're doing a wheelie down the street or whatever, it was awesome. But that happens, right? People, they do something, they create some cool content, and it does go viral, and it can be life-changing, depending on how viral it goes, and especially if it goes in right direction. Some things go viral and that are life-changing in the wrong way as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting when that stuff happens. So I kind of want to get in your head, like, what did you think about when that video was being made? Because I don't even know if you were planning on it being a video, from what I can tell. But tell me a little bit about that what happened there.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously I planned on doing the burnout.
Right.
I didn't really tell my wife that we were going to go do that.
Yeah.
But after, we said I do, and I was like, all right, now everyone come outside real quick. Right. And my brother already had the bike out there, and, so we just everybody off their cell phones. People were sending me videos of it. We had a couple hundred people at the wedding, so, everyone has a cell phone. So I just took the best clips, put them all together. And then the song that's with it, we actually walked down the aisle to that song.
Oh,
and so
awesome.
I added that in there, so just putting it on there, it just worked out the way it did.
Yeah. So after it went viral, and you said overnight you had gotten another couple thousand followers or something like that, which is more than, I think at the time it was more than double of your current following, which is great. Like, that's awesome. But you had mentioned earlier that you then decided, like, oh, there might be something to this, and it sounded like you changed your strategy a little bit for what you post. Is that true?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
So tell me a little bit about that, because I think that's important. I don't know who is listening right now. Like, I wish I could predict if they're going to have something like this happen, but if it does happen, it's unexpected when it does. If it does happen, you need to know how to respond. So that's why I'm asking this question.
Yeah. Well, so if something like that does happen, you kind of have two choices. You're like freaked out because there's all these people now like eyeing in on you, or however you want to put that, or you can kind of take that momentum that you're building and just go with it, because and hope that it turns into something, like I said, life-changing. And that's kind of how I've built my platform of social media. Well, and at the time that all this was happening was the same time that Brett Q had kind of started his Road to X Games.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always really been a big fan of Brett Q. I mean, since 2014, when I saw him, I was like, okay, I see him doing this. Now, if I did it my own way, but kind of similar, how is this gonna work out? And it just it turned into something cool. And this year alone, in 2018, one second here, let me look at this.
Yeah.
I think I've had 10 million views on Instagram through videos.
Mm-hmm.
250,000 likes. I try to do things on YouTube every couple days, whether it be an old video like the day I posted, the runs from me and my brother did from the first hill climb we ever did as pros, from 2008. It's just kind of, you want to give out content to people that they can maybe not relate to as far as the hill climb aspect of it, but they're like, oh man, yeah, it just started out just like that, like with the archive stuff, or I post pictures of my bike all the time. I tell all my hill climbing buddies, because everyone in hill climbing is like, how do you do this? How do you do this? So, and I'm not shy with it. I'm like, dude, I want this to expand. I will tell you every secret there is.
Right.
So I'm like, first off, I don't care what you think of my stuff as far as like another hill climber.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because a lot of different riders are like, oh man, you post pictures of your bikes all the time, They're same bikes, why do you post pictures of your bikes? I'm like, well, because people like that. my bikes get views, my bikes get likes,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to post that, Like, I could care less what you think about that, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
I'm doing this to reach more people, and that's kind of the thing. I had this really janky video the first time my nitro bike started up. I mean, I feel like it was filmed on a potato, but I think it was like an iPhone 3 or iPhone 4.
Yeah.
And I posted it, and like every big motocross or motorcycle Instagram reposted it. And it was like that easy. It was like, oh man, I'm going to do next time I start my nitro bike.
Right.
Or next bike that I build and I started for the first time, I'm going to do a video about it. Boom. Next thing you know, that thing went viral. I mean, that thing just today, we built that bike this spring.
Yeah.
Okay. And just today, it got reposted like on 3 or 4 different sites. One of them has, I think it was just today on that video, something like 90,000 views.
Wow.
I mean, that just from today.
That's awesome.
So I mean, it's literally that easy. I mean, it's just being persistent with it. And I try to post once a day or at least 4 times a week.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's hard to do because I'm up in Montana. Today it's snowing. I mean, it snowed like an inch on the ground this morning, and tomorrow it's supposed to be 70 degrees.
Oh, wow.
So and my plan was to go ride this morning, get some film, stuff like that. Well, that didn't work out. So now I'm going to be posting, or I'm going to be calling up a couple of photographers like, hey man, you got any old pictures or anything like that?
Right.
Yeah. Or I try to stack up footage to where I don't post everything in one day that I got. If I did something cool or of some cool stuff, I mean, it's just spreading it out and getting people to look at it. I mean, using hashtags, people, older people are like, man, hashtags, what are those? And I'm like, well, that's how you discover things on Instagram. I mean, the hashtag Moto-climb, we use that for everything now.
Yeah.
And you can see the growth of it. All the people that didn't like it, they're like, oh, okay, I'm going to start using the hashtag Moto-climb now, So it just kind of worked out cool that way. And I always I never try to post anything that I think is going to go viral, but I'm hoping that it does.
Oh,
you know
right,
what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, there's a slight chance that something does, but all it takes is one thing or one page to repost your stuff, and everyone will.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's that easy.
Yeah, definitely.
And whether you get it discovered naturally through like a hashtag or someone following your page, or maybe you message it to a page, because some of these pages, they can't see those things right away. They're not, they try to search through them, but if you message something, that's all it takes, sliding into a DM on somebody's stuff.
Yeah. No, that's very true. I have a quick follow-up question on that, and then we're going to actually kind of wrap things up. You had mentioned the number of views. I thought you said on Instagram. I thought you said number of views on Instagram this year and likes on Instagram this year. Is that right?
Yep.
How did you know that? How did you know that number?
So when you create your Instagram profile, you can create a business profile.
Yep.
And, it doesn't really change anything. Well, so that's something that my buddy Matt Musgrove taught me through the Moto-climb series is studying your analytics at like what time stuff is popular at. You don't want to be posting if you're worried about getting likes and followers and stuff like that. You don't want to be posting things at certain times because that's less likely that it's going to be seen. Well, so, I mean, I've done a lot of studying over that stuff and, trying to not only build that for myself, but build that for my son. He's 9 and I have him on Instagram, and he's just falling around like a normal kid, that hill climb that goes from one side of the country to the other hill climber, He's a pretty talented little dude and he's got a couple seconds in national championship and a 4th. And, so, I mean, he's off to, I'm trying to mainly everything that I do with social media and everything like that and sponsors, I'm trying to build not for myself, but for him because he's really into it. And I think that if I can progress our sport a little bit more, then it'll pay dividends for him to where, not that he doesn't have to go get a job or work anything like that, but it can be more financially feasible for him to go and do this more often.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of the goal.
Yeah, a little more of those family values, family tradition there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, sorry I keep harping on this, but it's partially selfish. Do you keep a separate tracker to track how many views you've had in the entire year? Because I feel like the Insights page only shows you like a week. Do you track that separately?
You can actually go on there and it'll give you options. If you click on when you go to your analytics or your insights, click on content, then you go to feed posts, and you click on the top of that and you see all, and it'll say show all posts in last year. Yeah. Well, then you can actually adjust how many followers you've gotten in the last 2 years. I mean, it goes upstairs. The amount of likes, emails, the amount of impressions, profile visits.
Oh wow! I've not played with this before. I mean, I've clicked around. So let's see. So people, if you haven't done this before, you should do it like right away. It's pretty interesting. So I just typed it in like filter by. I put impressions 1 year, and I'm gonna hit apply and see what that does. Okay, so it's got like I guess this would be all of my posts. It doesn't seem like it summarizes it, but it tells me each one independently, and it looks like it's all ranked from highest to lowest. Yep. That's interesting.
Well,
go ahead.
And the only reason I actually know any of that other stuff is because I'm gonna Matt Musgrove is almost my agent.
Yeah.
He takes all of my information and I know he basically has built a resume for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I use to get sponsors. And he's kind of summarized everything to where I don't have to do all the work, because the same thing with him as goes with sponsors. The more I grow, the more his events grow.
Yeah.
And the bigger we all get together, So, I mean, that's like his number one goal. He's like, and he's the most unselfish person there is. He goes out of his way to make sure that the riders are getting the credit that they deserve, because our sport is, not that big. So he's like creating pages and stuff like that where just our content is on there. So, if other pages want to come and repost it, they can.
Right on. Yeah, that's awesome. It's good to have a friend or an agent or a family member or someone you hire that does that stuff. It's good.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I would love to do this. I mean, I guess that's why I do this podcast. I talk about this stuff all the time, and I still keep doing it. But I would love to keep talking with you all night. But, hey, we got to kind of wrap things up now. So at the finish line here, that's when we kind of close out. I just want to ask you if there's just one thing you can kind of take away from this episode, one thing that you would want to ensure that people don't forget, what would that be?
To take advantage of social media and using social media as a platform to get sponsors. That's how everyone does it now. And that's kind of you're not sending in an application out of a magazine anymore, like I was doing when I was on 50s and 60s. People want sponsors, want followers, they want their product to be seen, and easiest way is on social media, and that's really what you have to do. You have to really try to build a brand for yourself.
Definitely. Yeah, it's very rare for a company to not have an interest in your social media following. It does happen, right? There's definitely people out there that they're not as interested in that, but a lot of the business models that sell some sort of product online, which is almost everything, at least a very large majority, they can benefit very directly from having a strong social media following. So that's where it's at. I mean, that's why people pay attention to social media. It is a great way to distribute content or distribute product. So you got to pay attention to it. Well, speaking of social media, I'm assuming that one of the best ways to connect with you is Instagram, but how should our listeners connect with you?
Instagram, it's Shawn Widdicombe 15. Then our Facebook, we have a team Facebook page, because I'm not the only one that hill climbs. It's my brother. I have 2 cousins, and then we actually hired another rider to ride for us. But and then my son, and then my nephew. But it's Widdicombe Pro Hill Climbing on Facebook, and then same with YouTube. And
awesome.
We try to weekly, and sometimes daily.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story, share your experience with us. I mean, I selfishly also really enjoyed learning more about Moto-climb. I almost said hill climb, Moto-climb.
Perfect. Yeah, that'll make Matt happy.
Yeah, I did. Like I said, I really wanted to have, a hill climb. I thought it was hill climb. I really wanted to have a Moto-climb person on the show, and I'm really glad that you're able to bring the background of the sport too and share that, because that's phenomenal. And then also just all the examples we went through, I felt that you described them in a lot of good detail, and I don't know, I really enjoyed this conversation, but it's done with now. We got to close it out. So again,
great.
Yeah, thank you very much. Have fun and ride safe.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks for being a part of this episode of the Sponsored Rider Club podcast, which is powered by AMSOIL. Make sure you subscribe regardless of whatever podcast player that you use, so that you'll miss upcoming guests. We have Andy Wenslaff and Taylor Bunke coming on together, and then we're going to have Ben White from Textron Off-Road. He's the sponsorship manager there. He's coming on as well. Follow us on social media, specifically our Facebook page. That's where we do our live shows. We just had Evan Shendell of Polaris Razor on, and he crushed it. You can always go and listen to those audio episodes if you subscribe as well. To get some insider access to upcoming guests, check out the Sponsored Rider Club on Facebook. It's a great space to ask questions about sponsorship as well. It's more of a forum and a support group than anything else. A special thanks goes out to our sponsors, AMSOIL, Neverlift Racing, SolderWeld, Bold Racing, TopThePodium.com, Crash Addict Industries, and Racing Addix. I also want to shout out some of our other partners, MBRP Powersports, GSP, XTV Axles, MBRP Exhaust, HMK USA, and Sudboy Traction. I look forward to serving you again next week. Until then, have fun and ride safe.